Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining. My name is Raf Cox. Or Raf Cox for short. I'm a co-founder and identity and security architect at Segwise. This presentation will be about our new offering about managed identity and access management services with a strong focus on managed conditional access solution that we have. And well, I hope to make you clear what exactly is in there, what is not in there, of course, that you have a very good understanding what this offering will have in itself integrated that could benefit your situation or your environment. And I hope you learn from it. You will see on the top of the Teams, you will see a Q&A. So please put your questions in there. We'll try to answer all the questions as far as possible at the end of the meeting or at the end of the presentation. So we have still some spare time left normally, if I keep my time right, of course. I do apologize already up front for occasional coughing and sneezing that might occur on my side, because I just got a cold yesterday. So I hope my voice will survive this meeting, but so far so good. So, sorry for that. So let's go through it. So what are we going to cover today? It's a bit talk about the IAM landscape. What is identity access management? Of course, how is this linked to the Microsoft world with Entra? And what are the interesting components in there that need our attention, and where also which one of those are a candidate for having a managed solution around it? Because not everything that you want to manage or that you have to configure in your environment is always suitable for a managed approach. But in this case, we'll dive into the conditional access part itself and make sure that you will get a good understanding why this offering is interesting for you and why a managed approach for this solution is also an interesting approach. Of course, for those not yet very familiar with conditional access, we give a very short overview of what is conditional access, why do you need it, why is it so important to have that, and also why is it complex? What makes it complex? Why do many companies struggle with that to maintain that properly? And we'll see there that indeed, well, this is probably one of the most crucial parts of your cloud setup. But of course, there it is important that, of course, it is maintained well and it fits well your requirements and it doesn't leave any gaps. We'll get back to that later on, of course. We focus then also a bit more on the what I call the business case for the managed device. We'll see that simple having strong authentication, even with what nowadays called phishing-resistant authentication, is not always sufficient to counter all attacks that we see now coming nowadays. And then we go, of course, into the more details of the Segwise managed conditional access solution and the service around that to show you, okay, what is the benefit of having this managed by an external partner with at least 7 years experience with it, like us, and how can you benefit from that, and what other nice and interesting features have we added to this service that would be otherwise very complex to do yourself. So if you look a bit at the IAM landscape, identity and access management, one of those components that are very well important in the whole security world itself. If you look at ISO 27001, this two whatever framework you choose, you will see that a big part of the security controls are located within the realm of identity and access management. And especially with the cloud, very often it was said already in the past, identity is the new security parameter. It is partially true, not 100% true, because there are other things that are, well, equally important in my opinion. But it has become a very critical part of accessing cloud services, of course. And very often there is not a lot more to prove and to control access and to manage the security of a cloud service that you have access and over which you don't have any control yourself, is identity and access management itself. Now, if you look at the big building blocks of identity and access management, I've divided them in four. One is identity lifecycle management. We have what's called risk adaptive access controls. We'll go in detail more. Access management, and then the last part in there is monitoring and governance. All of these controls and security measures, they serve to protect the applications that are integrated within your identity and access management solution, which is critical. They must be integrated. Otherwise, access management framework. And of course, these apps in the end are there to protect and allow you to get access to data that is stored within those apps and managed by those apps. Think about documents that are stored in Teams or in SharePoint, OneDrive, mails in Office 365, in Outlook, etc., etc. Now, if you go a bit further in detail in these different areas, if you look at identity lifecycle management, four big areas we can recognize in there. That it's the internal user lifecycle management, the onboarding of new users, offboarding of users, function changes, people moving throughout the organization on a regular basis, which is covered, well, basically by Entra, by just doing the user management directly in Entra, but also through new features that Entra has provided lately in the last year, especially is its identity governance framework that allows you to do real identity lifecycle management end-to-end. Now, the same exists also for B2B users, so your guest users, your partners, where it's very often for many organizations equally critical that you can manage those in a secure way, and that you are sure that, well, if person A is working for company A, that he can gain some certain access, but if he works next month or next year for another company and nobody has notified you, that he, of course, no longer has this access. Very critical there also to make sure that this whole B2B management and also your customers and consumers are managed in a secure way. Device identity, equally important, because you want to know from which devices users can get access and how they can get access from those devices. And also, of course, applications. Applications, they have also their identity. And very often, applications access data on behalf of users. So it's not simply of having, well, know the applications, but also making sure that you can strongly identify the applications, very often called service principles. And that you're also sure that if you allow an application to get access to something, that you have a good control and governance over that. Next part, access management, we recognize there are three major areas. That's the attribute and role-based access control, which we know already traditionally a bit from, well, putting users in groups, giving groups access to certain resources, but also attribute-based access control is more and more interesting. So you can say, for example, if a user is belonging to Department A and he's, for example, a team lead, he can get access to this resource. For example, because all of the team leads within a certain department have access to that specific resource. But also, just based on the attributes of the user, you already can do a lot of decisions on access control or not. Besides that, you will also have a need always for what's called access request management, which means that not everything, for example, if you launch a project across different departments, well, somebody needs to manage the project and provide access to users to gain access to the data maintained within that project. So in that sense, it's clear that also access request management remains important, and linked to that, you will also have what's called access reviews and governance around that, making sure that you know who has access to what, and so on. The next part, it's a bit of a catch-all, but there I put in whatever is called privileged identity and access management. Your admins, your help desk, service managers, and so on. What do they have access to? Because they have more often very critical access, access that can impact a lot of users if it's not used correctly. In that sense, Also very important that it's managed correctly, probably one of the more critical security controls in the organization. Security configuration management, making sure that the security setup of your environment is correctly done, and that, well, it adheres to standard best practices known in the world. And then, of course, incident response management, which we already do nowadays through our watch service, where we make sure that we monitor incidents related to identity theft, identity misuse, and other identity risks. The last part where I want to focus more upon is what's called risk adaptive access controls. And there we recognize three main areas. It's about authentication and user risk management, device risk management, and that is more linked to what's called modern workplace management, where also Partner Access provides a number of services around that to make sure that your devices are managed in a secure way in your organization. And also there, and that's the main part where we will talk about more in detail, is conditional access, which is the center point of making sure that, well, if identity is the security parameter, then conditional access is the firewall. You can imagine it like that. And then make sure that you can set out a number of rules that allow you to granularly control who gains access to which resources under which conditions. Now, why a managed service? Well, there's a number of reasons. I'm not going to all of them in detail, but for us, we saw, because we're already doing conditional access design, and especially what's called zero trust conditional access designs, making sure that there are no gaps, making sure that all the use cases are covered and, well, adjusted to the specific needs of each organization. We found out that we are repeating quite often, but not always doing exactly the same thing. So what we've done, we created also a model there to make sure that we can do a one-size-fits-all solution with a number of use cases, maybe not, well, valid for everybody, but at least valid for a large number of customers, and maybe some other customers will have other use cases that can be interesting for them. But with this one-size-fits-all solution, we can have now a much more predictable effort for deploying conditional access, setting it up, because we have one uniform setup for all our customers. Of course, all our expertise is now focused on maintaining this model, making sure that it is up to date, incorporates the latest best practices, security, well, let's say vulnerabilities that we found, and found out how we can cover these through these new security controls that we can build into the framework and to update on a regular basis, which in the end also leads to a cost saving, because if we can do the same thing over and over again in the same way, it becomes much more cost efficient, not only for us, but also for our customers themselves. Increased efficiency and making sure that we stay secure and future proof, because that's not always easy with conditional access. We see many customers that are lagging behind with their update on conditional access, that have still security controls in there that are already deprecated or will be deprecated in short term. And it's not always easy to update these without impacting the rest of the organization and potential also the operational, let's say, making sure that there's no impact on day-to-day operations and making sure that people can maintain access to whatever they need. So, oops, sorry for that. That was the wrong button. So how does it fit into let me quickly see here. Okay. How does it fit into the conditional access and then into this conditional access story? Well, if you look at the IAM on the left side, most of these services are more product oriented and really require well, business specific design. But for everything on the right side, there is indeed a huge opportunity to build a managed services around that. Like, for example, incident response management is already something that we covered today in our watch service, and that works very well. Security configuration access, security configuration management is already something we do on a regular basis with a number of customers through a service that we call the Connect service. Risk management of devices is also something done within our teams, but the one we will focus on is indeed conditional access. No, sorry. Conditional access, what is it and why do you need it? For those not yet convinced that conditional access is interesting, well, conditional access is actually the firewall for your identities, which means that based on the number of signals, and that can be the user, the application he wants to access, the device he's working on, a number of objects. Is he using a browser? Is he using an application as like Word or Excel or OneDrive on his device? And also real-time risk. For example, did we detect a user risk, a sign-in risk? Has he logged in suddenly from another location, and is he therefore marked as being risky and so on? All these signals are combined together, and through the rules that you can define yourself, you can then decide, okay, this user has now this risk profile, and from there we want to give him a certain level of access. This might mean just full access. It also can mean that you say, well, okay, but we don't trust it too much. Let's do a multi-factor authentication, or maybe you're accessing a very critical application. So in that sense, we want to make sure that you do a strong multi-factor authentication before you get access, or you can even simply be blocked. To give you a concrete example, a user logging on a laptop that is managed by your company on the company's network from a secure location, and the application itself is not super critical, you can say, okay, good, this user can now get access to this by doing simple multi-factor authentication without having, well, extra security controls around it. If that same user goes tomorrow on holiday somewhere in South Africa or somewhere else in the world, China, wherever you want it, countries and locations you might not trust. In that sense, you can say, okay, good. But if you see the same user logging on from that location, maybe without a managed device, well, let's block him because we don't trust that the user can get access from there unless it is a valid use case within your organization. And that's where, of course, it becomes important to fine-tune these set of rules towards the specific needs of your organization. Can we still cover that in a one-size-fits-all? Yes, because we have already foreseen a huge number of different use cases that we can cover within our design. Now, what makes it so complex? Like I said, there's a large number of security signals that we can use to create rules. If you look at the total number of combinations, I calculated it quickly. I think we have total more than 1 million different types of combinations, without counting all the applications that you have or all the users and so on, just by having the basic options within conditional access. Of course, having the right rules in place is critical. And what is influencing the personas you use, right? For example, your internal users, your admin accounts, external users, frontline workers, help desk employees, and so on. All the types of users with a different risk profile within your organization. But also authentication strength. Did they just use password or phishing resistant authentication? Did they use a trusted device or just they use whatever device we don't know anything about? Which country or which location did they use? A trusted location, trusted country, corporate location, or a highly secure network that you really trust? And also, of course, which applications did they want to access? It's, for example, a password manager might require higher security controls or more strict security controls than, for example, a parking app that allows you to reserve a parking spot in the morning. Also, there are different risks profiles for each of the use cases. And there's, of course, what's called real-time risk info. Do we know something about the user itself? Has his account maybe been compromised in the last hour or so? Have we seen very strange sign-ins? And maybe his device where he's logging on, has it been compromised, or did we see something strange on it happening? And do we want to restrict access from that device? Now, if you look, and people who know firewalls, they say, okay, good, but we will create rules ad hoc. So we will see, for example, that the moment we see a need for certain access, will open up a firewall rule and the user will get access. Problem with conditional access is that it works the other way around, which means if you don't have any rule, all access is granted without any restrictions, which is of course a problem. So what you need to do is to make sure that you have covered within all these set of different sets of signals that you can have, that you have covered with your conditional access design all these possible combinations to make sure that well, only trusted access is allowed and you don't leave gaps, even if new users appear, if new applications appear, etc., etc. And that makes it very often very hard. And what we see very often is with people do more spot design, which means they create for a certain application or a certain set of users, they will create a rule or a number of rules, but they forget about other applications, other users that are not incorporated in there, and so on. And then we see a lot of gaps occurring where people don't need to do MFA, don't need to use a trusted device or nothing else. So what is the challenge there is, well, making sure that you cover all the use cases, you don't leave gaps. The challenge is also to do fine-grained access controls, because you can just say, let's do multi-factor authentication, that's it, that's enough for us. But we'll see, and I'll give you some demos later on, that is not simply sufficient. Yeah. What you also often see is that people, well, if they troubleshoot, they make tests, they try to turn off a rule, making sure that this rule was not causing the problem, and they forget to turn it on again. Or they add a number of users to a certain rule as an exception. Yes, it works, and they forget about it, they don't investigate further. In that sense, we see a lot of configuration drift, which has also impact, of course, on the security level itself. And also, of course, on the other side, if you make mistakes, you can lock down and lock out everybody in your environment with a simple one simple conditional access rule. It's not difficult, but it's quite annoying to recover later on from it. If that was not enough, what happens also is that Microsoft is continuously updating, adding new features, deprecating old features from the model, and it makes it very hard to maintain the security level there. So let's see then, because I already said, well, what we see very often is that people think, well, let's do multi-factor authentication, and that should be more than enough. So if you can look at my screen, suppose one of your users would get following a mail where they say, hey, for some good reason, please open the document that is accessible through this link. And the access to, and the link itself is a Microsoft link, microsoft.com/device login. And what the only thing you need to do is provide this code to open the document. Your users have been trained, of course, so what they will do is look at the sender. Suppose this is a trusted party, a partner that has been compromised themselves, that has sent a mail. The link itself is, well, fully trusted. It is a Microsoft link, so most people will just think it's a valid link. And for the rest, that's it. So what will happen? Well, to demonstrate, I've created already some time ago a small tool that allows you to do this device code phishing. So what it does, it's generating this code that you see here, and this code is then sent to the user. Let's now take our voluntary victim, Henrietta, which is a demo user in my demo tenant, and we put the code in there. So she thinks, okay, I want to open this document. I'm going to put the code in there. Nothing wrong. Oops, I took the wrong code. I think this is the old one. Let's take a new one. Voila. And then Henrietta is going to log in. Okay, she's already logged in, even with phishing resistant method. It's okay, but okay, Microsoft sees now, okay, we'll ask for an additional verification of the user. This is what's called passwordless authentication. I authenticate now on my mobile phone. I'm authenticated. Are you trying to sign in to Microsoft Office? Yes, why not? I want to read a document, so probably this is Office. Voila, and that's it. And now Henriette is stuck because, well, she doesn't know what happens and she doesn't get the document. In the meanwhile, you will see here something moved here in the background. And you will see here what's called an access token. It starts with WIG. And this is an access token that allows you to retrieve data from the Microsoft tenant. So simply click retrieve data, and voila, I can see that, well, Harriet has some interesting documents in her OneDrive. I can also look at her emails that she has sent recently or received recently. I can send mails on her behalf, not directly now with this small tool, but I can easily create a tool to send mails, and so also, and then find other people there in her organization also to send the data to. I'm just checking if the users work. So you see, I can retrieve other users. I can select another user, and then from the email address I got there, I can send again a code to that user, and so extend my access within the organization. I can even store the refresh token and read it later on, so to maintain access over the coming weeks. So I can still do the same exercise again over and over again. This is what's called device code phishing. This is known already for years. Actually, I created the tool 3 years ago. Still works, fortunately. But it is it's one of these areas where you cannot protect just with authentication only. You need something more than just good multi-factor authentication. Still important, of course, but it's not enough. Another risk that we have, if you go to a browser, an exercise you can do yourself. You press F12. F12 allows you to open the DevTools. You log in, for example, then to a portal.office.com or another website, and then you search in the network for bearer, EYG, capital G. That gives you directly access to the access tokens that are used in the browser, and allows you to, well, copy these and use them elsewhere. Now, as a user, well, good, okay, it's interesting to find that these tokens exist. But suppose you have a malicious browser plugin or other malware running on your device that will capture this access token and send it to some other party on the internet, a malicious party, that then they can use it to log on under your identity to the service that was defined in there. So also this is an upcoming threat, not used a lot, but we had recently a number of incidents that were identified through our Security Operations Center, where a malicious PDF editor was found on a large number of customers. It was a freeware tool. It was available already since years, but suddenly it was weaponized. So somebody injected some malicious code in there, probably coming from the Russia government, or sponsored at least from there. And they started to, well, use these kind of techniques, grab tokens, grab access, grab Kerberos tokens, and so on, to spread their access to the rest of the organization. Yeah. Also there, valid technique, and which is not always easy to cover. And there are some now new features in conditional access that allow you to block certain accesses, not everything, to be honest. Yeah. But it gives already an indication that if you have a good control and good security monitoring of your devices from where the users have access, you can at least find out that users are doing, or that attackers are doing something. And the risk is, of course, a lot higher that something like this happens on an unmanaged device, for example, a hotel laptop that you use at the front desk to quickly check your mails. Rather than a good protected, well, company device. So we need more than just multi-factor authentication. So of course, make sure that you have strong authentication, but of course, always make sure that you have access from secure devices, and make sure that you have a pragmatic approach there based on risk. Don't try to block everything from unmanaged devices, not always possible, by the way. But do try to get all the critical access, the most dangerous ones, from only secure devices. Why is that important? This is my business case for the managed device. It's an additional factor. If you know that people only can log in from a managed device, well, then you have an extra factor, because you know, okay, the device has been set up, managed by us, we can trust it, it's monitored, it has antivirus, it has all the security controls in place, so we know it is secure. Also for DLP reasons, data leakage prevention, and so on, all things you can do on a managed device, and security controls that you cannot implement on devices that are not managed or maintained by you. Also, token theft attacks can be, well, much better mitigated because you have visibility over what happens on the device. So how does this look now? And what you see now is the basis for our conditional access managed model. And we try to combine what's called the authentication level with a device/network security level in a two-dimensional matrix, where we can move along through this matrix based on whatever the need is for a specific persona group within that organization. So to go a bit more in detail on how this works, so you'll have, for example, in the rows here, well, going from 0, where no multi-factor authentication is required for that specific group of users, to going to legacy multi-factor authentication. What's legacy MFA? It is what we call standard MFA, but with inclusion of SMS and voice. SMS and voice is being deprecated highly, simply because it's not secure anymore. As a company, you don't have control over the provider, how secure they are, how well they manage the access, if it cannot be intercepted, and so on. There are numerous attacks already known that attack SMS. Also, SIM swapping and all these kind of attacks are possible if you use and allow SMS and voice for authentication and multi-factor authentication. Modern MFA is actually the same, but without SMS and voice for authentication purposes, which means you have to use an authenticator app, whether the Microsoft one with push notifications or another one with OTP, which already provides much better security than SMS and voice. Going passwordless is the next level, because at least password phishing becomes, well, much harder for the attacker, because most of the users simply don't know their password anymore. And then the phishing resistant, well, let's put phishing between quotes because it's not 100% phishing resistant, but it does mitigate a lot of attacks against, and certainly man-in-the-middle attacks against MFA that are still possible with the levels above. If you look at the columns there, we see also 6 different levels. 0 is saying, okay, we don't have any restriction on the device on which device a user can log into. On level 1, we don't have any restrictions if the user logs in on a trusted network, on his corporate network. But once he goes outside of the corporate network, we require that at least the device is known to the organization by a hybrid join or just Entra join of the device. So at least it is known, can be managed at any point you want. This is something we use mostly in transition phase. It's not the target that we want users to move to. And for mobile, we always want to use what's called mobile applications management as soon as possible, because it's the easiest way to allow users access from a mobile device in a secure way. Going to level 2, again, on-premise, we don't have any restrictions, but once we go off-premise, the users must have a compliant device, Windows or macOS, and on a mobile, they also have to use MIAM. Once we go to level 3, and 3 and 4 are more the target levels for the majority of the users, we always require a compliant device for Windows or Mac, and or MIAM for a mobile device. So in all situations, and we don't take into account the trusted network anymore, unless for very specific exceptions. But the difference between 3 and 4 is that on level 3 in the browser, you can still access your applications in the browser from any device. While in level 4, also for browser access, you will be required to have a compliant device. So level 4, only access from a compliant device or MIAM on the mobile. And in level 3, browser access still possible from an unmanaged device. And if we go to level 5, then we talk about privileged access workstations. And these are workstations that are specifically marked to be only used by administrators within the organization. So they are high secure and provide much better security. Now, what we do is then a mapping. And for example, where are we want to get the users to? For example, if we want to have our users over time, not in day 1, but we want to have them in level 4 for multi-factor authentication, using passkeys and maybe YubiKeys or something else. And we want to have them in level 3 for device network access restrictions. And so for each of the personas that we have, whether it be a standard user, an admin, the help desk, trusted B2B partners, and so on, technical accounts, cloud technical accounts, B2B user, and so on, they will always map somewhere in this matrix on a certain location. And that allows us to very easily match and map the users at that location, so we know that the right security controls are enforced. Behind each of the rows and each of the columns are a number of conditional access rules that we fully maintain for you, which means we make sure that the controls we specify for that level are properly implemented, but also maintained over time. So if something changes by Microsoft, if there are updates, if there are new technologies, new features coming out, we make sure that they are incorporated in there. Of course, you will always start from an as-is situation and you want to move to this to-be situation. So how do we do that? We foresee there a gradual approach. So you can first move, for example, to a more strict authentication level. From there, you can then move to a better device level security, saying, okay, now if people are off-premise, they need at least a hybrid joint device. Then we go to passwordless and so on. So we can define the security journey not in one big step that you have to set from going from level 0, 1 to level 3, 4, but in multiple smaller steps that you can slowly execute over time in a longer period of time. Now, another thing that we learned throughout the years is that it's very important to be able to manage the exceptions in the right way. There are always applications that don't behave as they should. There are always possible exceptions for some things that you need to take into account. Business applications, just to give you an example, our parking app that we use, it doesn't work with mobile application management. Now we want to force users to use mobile application management for all applications, except that one. So we set up a model where we can easily flag applications by just saying, okay, this application can be exempted for the MIAM requirement. So we don't need to change any of the conditional access rules. We just flag the application and it becomes an exception for that specific use case, while the rest still maintains and stays in place like this before. Also, we will have this situation where some on-premise application or devices are maybe not compliant. Think about a Citrix server. Citrix servers themselves, well, they cannot be made compliant in Intune because they cannot be integrated in Intune. Azure Virtual Desktop can. But in that sense, it's important that you can make these pinpointed exceptions in the right way without giving too much access to everybody at the same time. So in that sense, the whole model also allows us to, for example, if we have the standard users here, for example, access to a VDI service can be done from any device, while we still maintain the standard authentication level that we need there. Yeah. The parking app that doesn't work with MIAM, we can also put in level 0, so it can be used from any device, while maybe our password manager is only accessible from a managed device, even through the browser. Yeah. While other applications can be accessed from the browser, but downloads are maybe blocked at that sense. So how do we take approach and how do we do this? We start with an intake, so where we do the analysis of what you have currently and what the security roadmap is, where you want to go to. So in that sense, we try to investigate, okay, what do you already have in terms of conditional access, in terms of security requirements implemented right now, and how should we map that to our existing model or Microsoft MIAM model, as we call it, how can we map that same situation in there so we can easily transition later on to a more secure setup with the model that we have in place. Once we have defined the as is, we have defined the to be, we will implement the conditional access model itself. It comes with a number of conditional access rules, quite a large number, but you don't have to worry about it. It's maintained by us. We will implement all the other prerequisites that are necessary, like custom security attributes and other things, trust locations predefined and so on, groups that are predefined, and make sure that we can implement or complete the conditional access model for you in your location on your tenant. Once this is done, we also set up a dashboard. I will show you later on how it works. And then finally, we'll do the baseline onboarding. So which means that your existing users will be moved to the model itself. So we can afterwards start the security journey for each of the persona groups that we have identified and move them to the location where we want them to be. And that is something that is executed at your own speed. If you want to take some time for it and say, okay, not everything needs to be done in year one, we can do already a certain upgrade now, and then we focus on the next steps next year can be done. There's no need to do everything one big step in one point or in one step, to have all security controls implemented in one step, simply because it will take a lot of time sometimes to get also the organization ready, to get users getting used to it, because very often there's also some user resistance against certain security controls. If a user can no longer use his personal Mac OS because you decided that we need to manage the devices and Mac OS is not managed, well, they will complain, and we know that, and there is always some time needed to get users convinced that this is the right way to go and get used to it. So to go to our dashboard, I can quickly show you a demo of that. So what we've done is we created a dashboard that will be updated on a regular basis. And the simple view is we create a security score based on the level the security the users in, the different persona groups are in, and we do a risk calculation, or let's say residual risk calculation of that. So we have our own kind of score. It will also be kept over time, so we'll have a historical view on the changes that happened in the last 6 months. You can also do the secure score by group. So this means, for example, if you have a persona group admins, then we see that, for example, they moved over time to this location, while the engineering department has moved otherwise, and so on. So we can have this secure scoring going up, identified per persona group and follow up by persona group. We also have, of course, the technical view. The matrix that we have here comes back with the different security levels. And here you can see, for example, that if you look here at level 100, added as the persona group consultants, total of 100 users. And we know that they have also certain exceptions managed for them, and so on. So in that sense, we can track everything related to the conditional access model that we have, make sure that we can manage exceptions, look at exceptions. Another interesting part in that model here is that we can also track the readiness to move to a next level. Suppose you want to move the users from level 2 to level 3 or to level 4, we can simply check, okay, which of the users are ready and which of the users are not yet ready to do so. And in that sense, We can then track for the users, see which methods they have already implemented, which users have already, for example, registered for multi-factor authentication with the Authenticator app, which are still using phone, and so on. And we can target the right users that are not ready yet. We make an export and we target the users to make sure that they get upgraded and adopt the new security methods. Also for device readiness, we have a similar model where we can track, okay, which of the users are ready to go to the next level. Sorry. For example, because they have a trusted device and so on. If you look here, for example, okay, this user, Embryon, indeed has a trusted Windows device, a managed Windows device, and therefore she can already move to this level 3, while other users maybe that are not ready, they can, for example, go a bit down here, you will see some users, for example, that don't have a managed device, and they can, for example, not move because their device is not compliant and so for some reason. So in that sense, it allows us to do full tracking, target specific users, and get people moving to the most secure solution in terms of conditional access. So a couple of views on there and so on. This dashboard comes with the solution, so it's also available to you. And also in there is that we will give you a feedback based on the dashboard, but also on other analysis that we do on a regular basis. So we foreseen an update of the complete model together with the dashboard twice per year, and also provide you feedback twice per year on how good you're doing, where you can probably invest in certain improvements, whether you want to do it for yourself or you want to do it together with us. That's open for discussion, of course. We don't force you in anything there. Also make sure and do understand that we don't introduce anything that is not available directly out of the box, except then for the dashboard, which is specifically for us. But all the rest is actually using the built-in features of Microsoft Entra, and we're not adding software in there that makes you fully dependent of us. If you cut the wire between you and us, at some point, you can still continue to work without any interruption. So for the next steps, and then I'll leave it open for some Q&A if there's anything. If you're interested in a deep dive inspiration session, we can do a 1-hour session. It's a pre-sales one to explain our model to the rest of your teams that might be interested. We'll go through it. We can also do the cost calculation for the service itself. Or you can simply say, okay, we're convinced we want to start with this, and then we can already start with the typical around 3-4 days, depending on the size of the organization, for the actual intake. So we can do a full scoping for the whole setup, including the execution of the security roadmap afterwards.